Hello, my name is Jenna Bosiger, and you're watching Cryptid's YouTube channel. On this episode, I'm going to continue talking about my 2013-2015 Bigfoot research that I was doing, and it's sort of like a documentary. And the last episode where we left off was that I had been finding these prints in the sandy riverbed, and I decided to... Waldo, don't do that. Good boy. He shouldn't chase his tail and bite his tail. I don't know where he learned that. You shouldn't do that when you get excited. Okay. So, you're a good boy. So anyways, back to the research that I was doing. I left off... You be in the video? Oh. All right. Well, where I left off, I had, let's see. I had been finding the prints in the sandy riverbed, and I decided to go back to Google Sky Maps and look for a place that might have better prints. So I looked for a place that was, closer to the water maybe, and that would maybe have mud, and also where I could access that area from, the street and the public and all that. Because it's not easy to find a place to enter that area. Anyways, so I did all that. And so I did that with the intention of looking for prints like I had found at the sandy riverbed. So there was a lot of anticipation and expectation, in going there. And when I went there, I found a multitude of prints. And the last video that I showed was a short video that I made at the time when I went down the riverbed a little ways. The central location and what was going to be my central Bigfoot hotspot from this point forward. And from this point forward, things really began to escalate as far as the amount of time that I was going, the frequency, and the intensity. I was definitely getting caught up in all of the excitement. Also, I studied these prints for a long time, and I did a lot of research about prints and the characteristics of Bigfoot prints, and there are some big differences between Bigfoot prints and human prints. I studied the prints of chimps and gorillas and orangutans and apes, not because I think that Bigfoot is an ape, but because humans share a lot of similarities with the great apes. But I do think that Bigfoot has to be either as smart or smarter than humans to be able to have stayed hidden for this long. I did find larger sets of prints, but they were always on the sides in the thinner mud area, and also sometimes they would also step on rocks. So it was really hard to find the bigger prints. And so I do have this collection, and what this is that I personally remember that this was where the big prints were. And so I know that the big prints are here somewhere, and that's why I spent a lot of time on these particular photos trying to, change the values and increase the contrast and the saturation, everything I could do to make them show up better, because I know that they were in this area. So I worked really hard on these, working on these photos to show the large prints, but it wasn't easy. So most of these prints, I'm not going to lie, they're not really huge in size, but they did have some strange characteristics, and there was more than one size. I do some casts later on, but I want to keep in the timeline. The other thing that I found in this area was a set of handprints, and I studied the handprints a lot. I even made casts, but that will come later in the timeline. I even find, a at least a year later, maybe 2 years later, another set of handprints that has really interesting characteristics. But again, I want to stay in this timeline, and talk just about the research that I did on this set of handprints. Here's the handprints. Now, if you look at these handprints, I drew an outline of them in red. They have very short fingers. They pressed really hard on the tips. You can see that. And there does seem to be hairs along the sides. And it doesn't, to me, seem like just kid prints. But one thing that I did is I copied the outline of the prints, handprints. And then I found online some prints made by chimpanzees in the snow, which obviously they must have been captive or in a sanctuary. But anyways, these are prints made by chimps in the snow. And so then I proportionately sized down my handprints and placed them next to the chimp prints. And I found it interesting that the placement of the hands, the way they're kind of placed like this, is actually, that's how the chimp was walking. You know, his hands like that. I found it very interesting. They look very similar, I think. Circled the handprints that were left at the Bigfoot hotspot. But I found that interesting. Some characteristics of Bigfoot prints. There's a tendency of the toes to be curled. Toe grip, where they'll grip onto the material, the mud or whatever. So a lot of times curled toes also means the toes are curling, and so they're gripping the material and creating like lines like that in the prints. Also toe splay, which is just the toes being not uniform because they haven't been confined in shoes, so they tend to splay out, the toes do. And then I personally was finding interesting things with the big toe, and finding a large big toe that seems to extend out and just have a mind of its own. Some other interesting traits of a Bigfoot print is that they put a lot of weight on the ball of their foot, which is something that humans don't do. That's the middle area of the foot, where most humans, sometimes you just see like a curve, or it almost doesn't even touch the ground. With a Bigfoot print, the middle, there's a lot of weight that it's put on there, so there's like a wide center. And they rely less on the heel. And also, I read that when they run, they don't have to put their heels on the ground. And so when they run, sometimes they'll just be the print of the front of the anterior of the foot. So you get like half prints. So I think I did see that a lot too. Here's something that I read that's interesting. The heel does not grow in proportion to the length of the foot, but lags behind. So the heel of the foot doesn't grow in proportion, but lags behind. I'm thinking about the childhood prints that I found with the very narrow heel. Does that fit that description? The heel does not grow in proportion to the length of the foot, but lags behind. So these are all traits that you can look for in a Bigfoot. Oh, something else to look for. You don't really know if they have claws or if they have really long nails. If you do see prints, look for that area and see if there's claws or nails or what kind of things are extending out past the toe. And look for hair on the sides of the print, hanging off from the leg. There's a lot of prints overlaid upon each other, prints on prints on prints. I went back a lot of times, and this will be in the next, when I make casts of the print, the huge print in the thin mud, and I'm only able to get the anterior of the foot. Measuring it across, it's very wide compared to my foot that is 3 inches across. All right, well, thanks so much for watching this next episode into my Bigfoot timeline of events, and I hope you enjoyed it. And next, I'll continue on with the casts that I made and the different sizes and things and nature of the footprints that I got. So until then, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and if you like this video, till next time, bye.